Well, I don't know about you folks at home, but I've been waiting for this week's Deadlock Fight Night presented by Intel with bated breath. We have just seen a massive update hit the game, and of course, who better than to take you through the road test than the crew here at DFN. I'm Mitch Lester, joined by Jason Kaplan. Jason, your hair looks marginally improved from 5 minutes ago, so I do commend you for that, mate. Do you not know how to ask for a haircut in Italian?
I got nothing to say to that, actually. To be perfectly honest with you, I gave my wife the ability to completely control my hair for a period of time. I've just been too lazy to go revert it back to the way I did like it. However, I do have clippers with me. Maybe if we have some kind of goal, I can shave my head on stream like I did way back in the days. Hope with a lot less shit talking.
That would be okay. You know what? Let's shelve that idea. Yeah, there was alcohol involved in that one, I'm pretty sure. Here at the Deadlock Fight Night, we're obviously very excited to have you guys here. There's a lot to discuss right now, but before we get into all the nitty gritty, let's talk about what we do over here. If this is your first time, been here for 15 weeks, so, you know, you've come at a great time, suffice to say. We're giving out, well, not giving out, yeah, I guess we are, $1,000 to our best team in each region, NA, EU, and now Pacific, thanks to our friends over at Intel. The way we get there is we play a best of one challenger match. And then we move on to the money match. That's right. It'll be a best of one, then a best of three for literally all the marbles. It's winner take all here at Deadlock Fight Night. And here in EU this week, we have a slightly retooled Aegis Aurora roster for reasons that we'll discuss a little bit later. And Pojilaya Skumbriya, a Russian team that often gets retooled. So we'll have a chance to touch on them. And then we go up against Virtus.Pro, our current king of the hill, and VP have been running the show for a couple of weeks now, but there's definitely been plenty of froth at the top with a lot of our top EU teams vying for position. This region we find is, pretty deep. It's got plenty of quality rosters, and we're looking to see which of these two can actually take on VP, put some pressure on them. Jason, I mean, very quickly, Aegis Aurora, Pojilaya Skumbriya. What's that?
Do I get to talk now? I don't know. I feel like you've been going on for days here. But ask me the question. Go ahead. I have a lot to say.
I was just doing some housekeeping. You can do the boring host stuff if you want to. But I was gonna ask you about these teams at least, because Aegis Aurora obviously have had to make some changes.
Yeah. Do you want to say why they had to make some changes?
We do that
for
here.
People. Okay. So another cheater has been detected, and he was banned out in the one-win bombshell tournament. So Kenny F no longer playing. And it's even funnier thinking back to me highlighting him after they took Deadlock Fight Night in EU against Buff and George, I believe it was, and Kenny F went like 35-10 on his Vindicta, and it kind of makes sense now looking back on it. But before we do fully dive into this, I at least want to say, if you guys didn't realize, and Uber did mention, we did have a DFN Pacific show on Monday. We were covering teams from China, from South Korea, from Japan, and from Australia. If you guys missed out on that, make sure you go over to Deadlock Fight Night over on YouTube and check those VODs out, because it was really cool to see some of these new teams that we haven't really had the ability to watch too often and see what they had to show us. And I have some high hopes for them as well if we do return back in the following weeks. But to kind of brush us into this one, yeah, we have obviously two big switch ups actually in both of these two teams, and a switch up with a big patch. Today is going to be a very big day, pretty much like the size of your guns if you checked out Mitch's Twitter today.
Man, I post one picture in reply to someone else, bro, and I'm getting flamed for it. It's crazy. Let's bring in...
I was complimenting. Bigger than my nose, your biceps.
Always waiting for the other shoe to drop with you, Jason. That's just the way our relationship works. Let's bring in ZP here, of course, our analyst here for this Challengers game. ZP, glad to have you here, especially because, boy howdy, we got a lot to talk about here. The map in Deadlock has been drastically changed. It is a full rework, the biggest patch that we've seen in the game to date.
Yeah, I mean, to call it the biggest patch is not an understatement, right? Where we have drastically reworked the entire map. We have gone from 4 lanes down to 3, and that changes everything. No more solo lanes. Now everything is duo lane. Map mobility is decreased across the board because you don't have as many zip lines. Like, removing just one zip line actually drastically increases the length of time to get to another zip line, where, of course, players at the competitive level, they use zipline tech to quickly traverse the map. the jungle vastly increased going into this. And also just the pure fact that when you have only 3 lanes, you're now in a situation where every objective matters way more. You're less likely to get scenarios where a walker might get solo pushed down because there's too much going down in the other 3 lanes. It's more likely that you have to fight for every bit of terrain you get. And also on top of it, lots of redesigns in terms of juke spots. The middle of the map is a little bit cleaner for team fighting than it has to be. You got this neat little basement we're looking at here. I mean, look, Mitch, we could spend all day talking about it, but more importantly, we just get to see the players play on it here today.
I mean, for some of these teams, to be perfectly honest, it might be the first time they're actually playing on this new change as well. Here's ZP. I mean, I know I got to see a couple of teams and use Scrim before we got into DFN tonight, but talking to some of the NA teams, I'm not gonna name who in particular, I guess we'll see later on, is just gonna raw dog it, they said today, with no scrims leading up into this actual change. But like you're saying, I mean, there's a lot, I feel like more verticality as well, because everything feels so much closer. You can see the rune there, the left-hand side buff, up inside that little bit of a mini bridge, a lot more launch pads around the map as well. And I think I personally like this change. I was never a fan of playing solo lanes. I was never a fan of losing lane and not having someone else to blame other than myself. But with these like 2-2-2 setups, it kind of maybe forces teams to think about how do we actually want to draft into this, because we don't need those insanely strong solo laners. We need comps that kind of work well together in lane to create an advantage. And then on beyond that, taking these objectives, I think, has even more impact, considering you no longer need 3 Guardians for your first flex slot, you need 2. You no longer need 2 Walkers for your first or your second flex slot, you need 1. And then it's the 3 Walkers and the rest is normal from there on after. So there's a lot of big changes in here that really drastically has to force these teams to change how they think about the game and how they go into the entire drafting phase of this game.
And now, obviously referring to this graphic, in lane, you no longer need to last hit a minion to get some souls and to produce a soul orb. They always pop out, right? If a player is within range of them. But ZP, now it's also more incentivized to try and go for those denies because the split is now even.
Yeah, I think the change that you're going to get in lane, on top of it now just being duo in every lane, right, is the fact that you can be a little bit more aggressive. And while, yes, you may give up a deny in the process, you don't have to worry about the tension of getting every last hit and mixing the last hits in with the pressure on your opponent. And the reality is that if you are currently actively shooting your opponent, it's going to be hard for them to deny at the same time. Some people will manage it, right? But I think the general tempo change within the lane from the last hitting change, more than anything else, is that you are incentivized to fight more actively than you were in the past.
Of course, here, the Sin of Sacrifice is the slot machine, right? That we players sort of hit with charged melee attacks that give you souls on each hit. Now, when you... there's little lights at the top of the Sin of Sacrifice, and basically if you line up your heavy melee timing with that and destroy the machine, you get 3 of those golden statue buffs as opposed to 1 random one that you got in the past from fighting for that. So it's definitely leveled up the value of the machine, but it also requires you to potentially spend a little bit more time around it. And of course, we sort of got to see that mid-boss area. It's kind of weird, right? It's below the map now, and there are only a couple of ways to actually drop into that area with the ropes that come down. There are, of course, like stairways that sort of lead you in there, but the way it's fought for, I think, is going to be a little bit different. The way camps spawn, so like, small camps spawn a little bit earlier, and so do mid camps. So there's that to bear in mind. The walkers have been increased in terms of overall health points now. So the side walker's gone from about 5k to about 7k, mid walker from 8 to 9k. A ton of stuff to bear in mind here. And yeah, we do expect that these objectives are going to be harder to push down, more contested. And again, like maybe you're punished even more for sort of splitting the map because you can see how far apart these objectives are. A lot to talk about. We're going to cover it, I think, as it sort of comes up, in game. But that's about the long and short of it for the time being. It's really interesting. The game's in a very curious place right now. A lot of teams, like I said, are just wanting to see how things work out. We'll talk about these rosters a little bit now because, like sort of Jason mentioned, you alluded to this earlier, both have seen a bit of a shakeup.
Yeah, I mean, Go ahead.
Go ahead, ZP. No. You.
No. Obviously, the biggest shakeup here is the Aegis Aurora roster, right? Where essentially it went off the Kenny F situation, right? Where even between yesterday and today, there was a bit of a change where it went from like transporter into overseas. So Aegis Aurora obviously changing up because of that one player. Pojilaya Skumbriya, also a team that's been in flux over the last month, just because Jason, as we know, they went and formed the super team, or half of Pojilaya Skumbriya went to form the super team with the former DMS, which is now Perry Vision.
Yeah, and I feel like in early days when you see esports like this, there's always so many roster swaps, and it makes it really hard to work out the problems you have within a team. And I feel like it's really easy for a lot of teams to just say, all right, we're gonna swap this player out and see if we can make something else work. But you look at like Virtus.Pro, and they've been like a stable 5/6 for a very long time now. And I think one of the reasons they are so good is because they're willing to work on their mistakes, and they're willing to give people chances. And obviously being the top team in EU helps with that quite a bit. But looking on the side, of Aegis Aurora, you have overseas great talent we've seen have a massive rise up through in DFN the last few weeks as well. Sunset, we're seeing him come back for, it feels like the first time in forever, because he's been on a couple of different teams, finally making his way back to Pojilaya Skumbriya, because he was there in the very first inception of the team. But it's gonna be an interesting match. ZP, I kind of want to ask you the hard-hitting question. Do you feel like either of these teams right now could beat Virtus.Pro? And I feel like I kind of know the answer right now.
I think for me, actually, I would say any given day is kind of where I'm at, especially given that we just had a huge change. The reality is that no team is 100% comfortable on the new map, on the new changes. And while teams are not necessarily strangers to big changes happening within Deadlock, I think the reality of the situation here is that you cannot be 100% sure in favor of any team right now, regardless of their historical strength, because you always get curveballs when a game experiences a change of this level.
Now, we will be dominating the game in just a moment. First, though, we need to decide on what side these teams are getting to choose. And to do that, of course, we have our typical Mo 1v1. Now, ZP, this month's Mo 1v1 is going to look a little bit different. Do you want to explain exactly why that is?
Yeah, I mean, look, some people might say it's just we recorded it on the old patch and then went to the new patch where we had the re-record it there. But I think in this case, the Mo's, they're really desperate to win here, Mitch. So they're taking every performance-enhancing substance they can. And you look at them, they've never had Mo's more charged up than this.
Okay, so obviously we'll have this 1v1 fought out in the new patch for you. It's actually quite a close one, in fairness. And there it is. I actually can't read that player's name, but
can we see that again? Actually, is that possible? You think? Or are we delaying the game too much? Oh my god,
it's doable,
bro. It is. What
are your thoughts?
It's a little dance.
Who is that, by the way? Is that ABL? Who is the blue?
I think it's ABL.
Okay, I can't tell. It's only 3.
Let me zoom in. No, I can't tell.
I think it might have been it. Well, it was Wizaster for sure was one of them. Okay. There. So yeah, it might have been.
How much caffeine have they had ever since that patch dropped to make sure they're ready to go? And we can see how amped up just the Mo's are.
Curse Apple, the lane distances have gotten longer, right? So just take a little bit of a performance enhancer here and there to make sure you can, make the distance. That's fine. I respect it. All right. Let's get this draft going, guys. That's I think there's like plenty to discuss here. Also, very quickly, there were some holiday changes snuck right into these patch notes here. There were broadly nerfs, again, mostly to holidays. I think sort of landing damage off the jump pad and stuff like that. She was still considered to be pretty strong. So
I can tell you, Mitch, even with these nerfs, we're seeing her plate still a ton. She's still insanely good, especially when you're going to be going for a lot more of these team fights. That stun still has ridiculous impact, and the rotations can still create opportunities for your team for sure. What's up, ZP? What are you laughing about?
Oh no, I'm seeing all the reactions to the Mo that's going on right now. People are just as they've caught up to the stream and they're aware of what was seen. I also just saw the Mo's again, just ultra caffeinated. But we got a draft to talk about here. And Sinclair first on the ban menu for Aegis Aurora. This really isn't too much of a surprise. I mean, I think we've seen this in both regions as of late, where people generally don't like giving up Sinclair. People started to realize his power especially after buffs that he's gotten in patch after patch, and it's just too much of a wild card. So whether it be Pacific, NA, or EU, teams aren't a big fan of dealing with Sinclair. But the holiday ban coming out from Pojilaya Skumbriya also makes sense, because you can make a strong argument right now that Holiday, arguably an even better playmaking hero than Paradox as far as the priority
I'd agree.
list. Yeah.
I'd for sure agree, especially with like the verticality as well. Like the jump pads that you have just give you the ability to climb some of these abilities and get different angles that a lot of people don't expect. Not to mention, one thing I think we are seeing when it comes to these matches is a lot of ambushes. And I feel like Holiday performs much better when it comes to an ambush than a Paradox would ultimately. But we're still going to see the Paradox locked in either way here for Aegis Aurora. I'm kind of curious, ZP, looking at our draft here, and I mentioned earlier on, I'm kind of expecting to see more of a push towards like really good synergy between certain laners laning together, but also like maybe a slight switch up in the draft, though I'm assuming for the most part is generally going to be the same since we are basically day one on the new patch.
I think what I'm curious on, Jason, is just to see the value of heroes like Yamato, heroes that were just generally known for being great in solo lane. And, not that Yamato wouldn't be bad in terms of scaling and all the reasons why you pick her for late game, but part of why you did like picking Yamato is just the fact you would know you would lock down either your lane 1 or lane 4 with an above average solo laner.
Yeah.
I think similar with like Pocket too, is that I feel like he was generally a better solo laner than he is a dual laner because of that magic or the spirit resist that he lacks, on his 15%, which makes him very susceptible to being bursted and killed quite easily in lane. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Pocket kind of fall off a little bit, considering we've had him again come out of nowhere back into the mix.
And maybe like powerful duo laners. I think Kelvin's a great example of that, right? Who over the course of a game can put upwards of 50k healing down, and once you get 3 points in that frost grenade, or rather that second level, you're healing with it. You pick up healing booster. You have a lot of those healing items in general. Also, just quite like once you get enough points into his 2 and you have like a fleet foot or something, you cross the map incredibly quickly. You can cross between lanes very fast as Kelvin here, where for many heroes it's a little bit harder to do. So he's very, very quick. Worth keeping an eye on. Mo and Krill here going to be locked in, honestly, earlier than we normally expect to see it here for Aegis Aurora.
I think that we talked about earlier than I expected too. Kelvin going early in the draft, you kind of expect to see that in North America, and we also saw it a bit in Pacific, right? But in EU, Kelvin usually hasn't been as high of a priority historically, but even EU now bending the knee to the early Kelvin supremacy. Mo and Krill, though, going early for Aegis Aurora, I feel like does make sense, because if you go back to the beginning of the year, when they were on top, when they were doing really well, they did it off of Mo and Krill comps, and then eventually...
They had a cheater, though, to be fair.
Yeah, okay.
This is why this pick is a bit sussy as well. Like they've never lost. They've never lost when they pick Vindicta, Aegis Aurora, but that's because Kenny F used to play Vindicta.
Yeah, there's two reasons they really rise up to the ranks, CP. One of them being the Mo Vindicta combo, but also another maybe because they had a cheater on the roster. But continue.
It is what it is. Look, I'm sticking to the brass tacks analytical parts here. And the reality is that they did lose the Mo. The Mo did get banned out against them a lot, Jason. So them getting the Mo early in the draft is probably a measure. All other things aside about the fact that they don't want the Mo to get banned in the middle of the draft. Thank you very much.
I find it interesting, though, that they are putting such a high priority on it early. I wouldn't expect Aegis Aurora to still depend on the Mo and Krill to set things up. So I don't think they would have to worry about being banned away, but I feel like maybe Mo is a lot more stronger now, considering we see a lot more contesting for jungle camps. I guess a little bit of a level of safety again, could be very mobile around the map as well, depending on how you build him. I'm not too surprised to see a Mo, but after looking at DFN Pacific, Mo was actively like one of the top 2 picks in a lot of teams.
Yeah. 7 ban here. What are your thoughts on that? Because we did see Virtus.Pro. They are a team that is really pushing it, but in last week's DFN, it was only them that we really saw go that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that people have just appreciated Seven's ability to lock down and be played a little bit more actively than where it was before. Like, the old 7 meta was 7 eats the jungle, eventually comes out of the jungle with like 10k more souls than everyone else. Then you kind of have Listic coming back in, popularizing, hey, we can play more active 7 that's, more focused on the stun, and we can still make it work out really effectively even when the 7 isn't drowning in riches, right? So it's just people realizing 7 can be used for more. I think Viscous getting bad middle of the draft here, though, does make sense to me. I mean, it's kind of weird how Viscous has been up and down, but the reality is that still a very, very good frontline option that you don't necessarily want to give up, especially with how good he is in duo lane right now also.
I mean, it also helps that you don't have to worry about him countering any sort of combo with Mo and Krill and Vindicta as well. On top of that, just to quickly touch on the 7, I could be wrong on this because I mean I have the same amount of experience as everyone else does on the new patch, but I feel like the jungle camps are a little bit closer together and easier to transition between. So 7, if he was already a jungle monster before, he becomes even more of a beast because of how quickly he can push through everything and come out of that jungle really far ahead in souls.
Yeah, there might be a world where like one of the mid laners can actually just spend a lot of time in their safe jungle side. And there's a potential that lane can be turned into like, or a bit of like a pseudo solo lane if one of them wants to do a lot of roaming. You'll notice here, like, these drafts do feature a number of heroes that are very adept at sort of rotating in and out of those lanes rather quickly. Paradox, Mo, Vindictive to some degree, I suppose, but Pocket and Wraith especially. So keep an eye on that one. Lady Guy's going to be locked in here for Aegis Aurora. So again, a front line that's going to be pretty annoying to deal with. They've got a really good foundation, and they've got 2 flyers on their team. Two flyers.
Yeah, you don't see this a whole lot. I mean, part of it might be the idea of, okay, you run the Talon, which is generally one of the more effective counter picks against a Vindicta, right? The idea of, teams will usually grab it in response to a Vindicta. You grab it yourself, you are denying the other team from getting it. On the other hand, going double flyer, you're really exposing a lot of your ground to just getting absolutely pummeled in response, right? Like, Geist is tanky, Mo is tanky, but the reality is that there's going to be tons of pressure on them early in the fight.
Viscous then? Like, you have Vindicta Grey Talon, obviously, who Viscous can struggle to interact with a lot of the time. Like, interesting.
I think it's just prevent the cubes, right? It's prevent like the kill potential they have, especially early on, because
the Mo and Vindicta.
Yeah, exactly. That was a lot of the strength that we saw of Aegis Aurora in the very early days. But if they have to rely on getting a Mo Vindicta combo to win games, I worry about them as a team in general.
Okay.
You were looking to summon a god,
Lash,
right?
Warden to round things out. Now the map is way more vertical now, right? I think a lot of people expecting to see like Lash obviously have a bit more application because there's much more verticality in transitioning between those lanes as well. The bridges now are very high up, which is where the buffs spawn. There are a lot of these little sort of jump pads in between those that just sort of cut the map, sort of west to east. But I definitely, maybe more room here for Lash to transition through the map. And it's not been a good pick for Pojilaya Skumbriya, a 25% win rate.
Well, I will say is that when it comes to Lash, having Lash in the mix, especially after picking Kelvin, is still good. I mean, obviously we saw the ridiculous combo in Pacific, but in general, it's kind of been common knowledge on the comp side of things that when you're picking Lash, you don't really enjoy picking Lash into a Kelvin, but Lash and Kelvin can be best friends, right? Yeah. So that's probably why they're able to get the Lash a little bit later into the draft, given the fact that the reality is Lash probably does have increased value on the new map. He benefits a lot from still having better mobility than average when mobility is a little bit cut down with one less zip line. And also, as you mentioned, the verticality in different parts of the map, well, that's more room for Lash to set up big damage. So all in all, I kind of like the Pojilaya Skumbriya draft a little bit more here of the two, just because they've secured good power picks. And I think they've also, with the Lash, I think they've kind of got a leg up on what is probably strong within the new map.
Jason, I think that pronunciation was one of his best efforts. Like, I don't think
it gets around.
Is
what? I want to blow chat's mind here for people who weren't on DFN Pacific really quickly, because it completely caught me off guard. Did you realize that ZP does not have lenses in his glasses?
It's true.
I never realized that until he went straight through it, and it was great. Because I'm just giving a little bit of a piece of bait to chat, because they've been such great people coming around here every single week.
I think Jason's trying to take the heat off himself. That's what I think.
What's there to have heat about for me? I'm handsome. I'm tall.
Are you serious?
Beautiful wife.
I think what Mitch is talking about, Jason, is the fact that like a bird could like just nest in your hair right now and it would not look out of place. Is what Mitch is going for.
You know what? We can mess it up even more if we want. Trust me.
It is crazy that you what is your life that you were just happy to at a dime just shave your hair? You know what I mean? That's crazy to me.
I'm gonna get DFN 1,000 subs. You heard it here first. We get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the show.
We have 77 right now.
I put in such a far goalpost because I know it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, so yeah, the Lash. I don't hate the Lash, to be honest. I think it's like we talked about with mobility, it's very nice. Also, you do have that potential to get into the face of Vindicta and Grey Talon, like especially if you're rocking like a Majestic Leap and really take away that verticality out of them. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lash build like a knockdown to help out with this on top of that. But you would just have to imagine all it really takes is that one good ultimate into a Kelvin Frozen Shelter, and the people inside are pretty much just gonna die here.
We've got to come up with a name for that, like death slamming people into a frozen shelter, because it's the most dignified
death.
You're getting slammed into a freezer is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean,
we can do better. We can do better, chat. We're gonna come up with a name for it. If it reminds me of concrete booties, except they're made out of ice, you know what I mean? I feel like we can work with that. Brad, thanks for the prime sub. Yeah, one closer to having Jason shave his hair. I feel like he wants to shave his hair. I don't know why he'd sort of bring it up, but 1,000 subs is quite doable. Also, keep an eye out for the new dash. There's a bunch of new VFX in the game, by the way. Obviously, you've seen Abrams' one. Calico's had a lot of updates to her VFX. Also, she was conspicuously absent from this entire draft. I think that might be worth talking about at some stage, but maybe it's just the way the map has changed now. Mirage also has a cool dash animation. I want you guys to look out for that one. It's quite fun to see. But Aegis Aurora have some real fucking glass cannons on this team. Excuse my French. I mean, we have 2 flyers plus the Infernus again, who can be blown to smithereens pretty quickly. They've got great ways to pick their fights, and of course Mo and Krill to be able to lock people down. The Pojilaya side of things, like, you've got that Warden in there. You mentioned, Jason, we'd expect to see less of the Pocket just because he was maybe less of an adept solo laner, but maybe he's going to be more roam intensive.
I think he's got to be very careful at which lane he chooses to go into. He has to ideally avoid Great Talon. Ideally avoid Vindicta a bit. I don't know actually what the pairings are really going to be here, because there is you have to think about a lot of like the micro interactions that can happen. I feel like Ward and Mirage can be an insanely strong lane because you have the tornado into a binding ward, and that's almost a guaranteed kill. I think Lash does struggle a little bit because you have to rely on your big ones to provide a lot of damage. But in terms of like CC, they're kind of lacking quite a bit here on the side of Pojilaya. But then again, like the stake can really set things up nicely for Aegis Aurora. I just don't expect Vindicta and Great Talon to ever really be in the same lane, because a stake into the trap could be pretty damn overwhelming.
Is this all about just having oppressive duo lanes for Aegis Aurora? Because they've got a lot of heroes that are really freaking annoying to play against.
Well, I think that's part of it, right? Is that you definitely have less room for, say, your solo laner to come in and provide relief to a duo lane. I mean, I think winning your duo lane is far more important than it ever has been, because of the fact that even going for a gank right now in the new map is more of an investment, right? Just in terms of increased travel times between maps. Like, yeah, there's jump pads, but it's still going to take longer. It's still going to be more telegraphed than it was in a 3-lane setup. So being self-sufficient in your own lane and not needing help is going to be pretty damn important overall in how things are set up currently. So yeah, I think you don't want a losing lane, because the amount of work you're going to need to do to fix a losing lane in the early game is disproportionately high to what it was in the previous patch.
Big shout out to those that are coming in with the subs. We're getting absolutely juiced right now, which
is we just doubled subs.
We just doubled our subs.
What we've learned here actually is that people don't watch for the deadlock.
Man.
They watch for Jason's pain. Is what that is. It's like, as soon as you tease like the concept of just Jason losing something tangible, people are all in.
Bro, take care with the big 50 gifted.
Maybe charge the Clippers. I think I'm gonna need them.
Yeah, you're gonna get them fired up. Holy! Thank you so much for those that are choosing to sub right now. Obviously, it's with your help and with the help of Intel that we can actually make this show happen. So thank you for being here as always. Another way you can support the show, if maybe throwing subs in the chat doesn't quite do it for you, is to head over to deadlockfightnight.com and check out our merch store. We actually have, with a new patch, a bunch of new merch that's legally distinct enough, of course, to keep us out of hot water. But this is another way you can support the show. I'm a big fan of the Earn one. Obviously, that it grows legs and runs off. Also, the Calico merch looking really, really clean. So you can check that out. And if anything sort of takes your fancy, it'd be a great way to support the show, or hopefully allowing us to give back to you as well. Deadlockfightnight.com. Tenzio! Bro, chill! Jason,
also, as the subs keep rolling in, I just want to note, some people may be wondering, is like, that's all well and good, and yes, we do want to see Jason just be completely bald. But that all aside, the game did just drop an update in the middle of broadcast right now, so we're just waiting for everyone to get patched on up is the current delay. The updates wait for no one, including us, as it turns out.
We obviously we had a sub goal. I don't know what the goal of the sub was, because we've set Jason's hair shaving to 1,000, but thank you for helping us reach that extremely arbitrary goal. We're also only 88 followers away from 10,000. So if you're here watching the show, maybe it's your first time, maybe you've been here a few other times, give us a follow and hit the bell so you know when shows are going live. We've just added, of course, our Pacific show, which maybe happens at a time zone that you can watch. Maybe you're, in that part of the world, or you're in EU, for example, which is obviously an easy time. So click that bell, give us a follow, and then you'll be notified when we go live. We are, of course, getting pretty busy here at the Deadlock Fight Night, and we hope to only get busier. So thank you very much for your support, guys. We really appreciate it. We're going to be in the game for you in just a moment. Yeah, the game update did hit a little bit different. Do we probably can.
Are we lying about a game update and it's just to wait for more people to sub?
That'd be so funny. No, we would never do that. We would never do that.
No, the game update is legitimate, but actually we tapped secret hidden contacts and like got the game updated specifically as part of like a bigger secret stratagem to get Jason's hair off his head. That was actually the play.
You know
we
what?
needed
it's gonna be
real
up one day,
authenticity.
whether I like it, and I'll be making a nice vacation to Turkey at some point. Not by choice.
I mean, it's fine, honestly. I just like one of your peaks is higher than the other one. That's the only thing.
Well, there's a reason I don't tilt my head down. Let's just say that.
My forehead looks smaller when I do this. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, not the top of my head. It looks quite bald.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I mean, that's fine. I mean, come on, bro. We're mid-30s. You know, that's the way it goes. I mean, we can't be CP with these luscious.
Aren't you actually just only 30?
No, I'm 33.
Okay.
No, I'm kind of old.
And isn't ZP, are you like 45?
Absolutely not. I am still in my 30s, good sir.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, like honestly, what I'm hearing here is like Jason is just trying to throw shade anywhere other than himself right now.
Yeah,
it's like
I'm
where this is going on.
He's like as well.
He's just trying to get all the heat off of him, but you know the heat is going to be off Jason now because the heat in game is turning up here, Mitch.
I mean, it's popping off in general. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate the hype train. Appreciate all the subs. Tetsuo, the go with like 80 plus, and all of the new follows. Thank you. We're going to jump into this game in just a moment. It will be Aegis Aurora fighting against Pojilaya Skumbriya. The winner will take on Virtus.Pro in a best of 3. Let's head to the Cursed Apple in the new 3-lane configuration and see what's good.
I honestly, I'm gonna like put a little asterisk here for the broadcast today. I feel like we're all gonna be learning about what's actually gonna become the meta. I think the teams are still gonna be figuring things out like this as well. So give us some slack here tonight because we are pretty much coming to this just as fresh as all of you out there are as well. But we can try to kind of see our lineup matchups already kicking off here. We do have Kelvin and looks like Wraith up against the Moat and the Geist in lane 1. We've got the Mirage and Lash up against the Paradox and Furnace in lane 2. Do we call it left lane, mid lane, right lane now? I don't know.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, I think we could do left, middle, right. I think that makes the most sense. I'll also say here, in terms of lane positioning, putting the Lash in middle, I think is great. Like, I think you want your most impactful roamers in middle lane if you could do so, because for Sunset, he's going to have plenty of options when he hits 3K souls.
I mean, how rough is that Vindictive Grey Talon lane on the right lane here for Aegis Aurora? Is that reasonable? It seems a little inhumane.
It's a lot of damage.
Yeah, it's not going to be the easiest lane to deal with. I mean, okay, Warden Pocket, not the absolute worst response, at the very least the Pocket, but they're going to be spending a lot of the lane into the tower. But look, my last word before we get into this, I am just excited to see how the roaming goes about, and especially how teams both play for and protect their jungle, now that we're in 3-lane deadlock.
Thank you very much, CP. Yeah, it definitely looks like Aegis Aurora have chosen that right lane to be their quote-unquote strong lane because it is the furthest away from mid as opposed to the other one, technically. So I guess a little bit harder to get help. Yeah, I wonder if we just sort of get locked into these lanes as the Binding Word comes out and ABL is definitely able to slide on away from it here. Maybe we just see like the lane phase be a little bit more centralized, a little bit more siloed from one another. Alk Flask comes on in, but it's all good as yeah, this obviously this Warden Pocket lane is trying to poke back as much as they can here at Overseas and AVL, but it is going to be a tough job. They are going to be on the move, and already we have a backtrack here for some items. Make sure, by the way, in your builds, you right-click those items. It queues them up for auto-buy, which is fun if you don't want to think about, clicking your items.
I believe they fixed some of the bugs with it as well when it came to trying to buy up items and selling items. I honestly, from the scrims I was watching today, I wouldn't expect a ton of action happening like prior 8 minutes when we start to see like the jungle camps and the center sacrifices really come into play. If anything, you're just going to see some like 2v2s that like some teams are more confident in winning out on. But before that, it was relatively quiet in a lot of the matches. And when the center sacrifices come up, considering it gives you 3 buffs now, if you do time it correctly, are insane, especially if you can farm them onto like 1 or 2 players in particular. If you can steal away from the enemy team, it becomes even more impactful. So that's what I'm really looking towards when we get into these 8-minute marks.
Oh, Saint's in trouble. I don't even think that Slam is going to do much to help them. Freemox saw an opportunity there. It looks like Saint just traded poorly, I think, in some of that back and forth. And And there wasn't a whole lot that Sunset could really do. They tried to intervene, but they had to have known that Fremont was going to die for that kill.
I think he got caught when on top of the bridge. Obviously, mid has been changed drastically compared to what we saw in the last patch. And with the tornado, I feel like the back away came out of his teammate, out of Lash there, and Sunset wasn't really able to back him up. And then unfortunately, just kind of gets caught out. But it's an early kill, and honestly, the early kills aren't really going to matter, I think, too much. He's not going to miss out on really too much farm. It's not really even a 1K lead between these two teams either. It's a little bit under that. I think it comes down to like how many denies, which I wish we had some sort of counter in the game to see, considering they're even more important now.
Yeah, let's add more clutter. Let's add
that's fair. That's fair.
Oh, it's fine. I get it though. Yeah, I mean, in the past, obviously, we were able to, in other games of this ilk, let's say, we could sort of check on that. We'll be able to keep an eye at least on how the souls go. And you notice that because there's not a lot of roaming, that honestly, the lanes have been pretty well behaved. We'll see what happens here with Zasta. Oh, yep. Now there's ultimates are online. Jamside hits him with a telekinesis, and the follow-up is there in a plentiful supply. Wolfie there cops some poke now as ABL wants to come a little bit further forward, but Wolfie wants to take that fight as well. Here's the cloak, perhaps. Some of those barrage hits came in, justifying that little push up, but at least they created a little bit of space with his pocket going forward.
Yeah, those charge shots are kind of ridiculous against like Pocket, who has negative spirit resist, like 15% less than other players. I think that's why he went the Enchantress Barrier first, just for the extra spirit resist and can soak a little bit more damage. The swap does come in and catches out on one player. It's going to be Mirage Saint, going to be overextended now. His concussive combustion is going to come through directly under the turret.
Reached down, but it's still pretty dangerous here. Saint just had the health pool to come forward and be very, very aggressive. So this is now going to force Wizasta completely out of the picture. Bandwise, though, has gone down. That is going to be that annoying Vindicta Grey Talon lane that is just laying some pain down. And this in the left lane here, Hapax does fall, but it's an early Guardian, really very early, 5 minutes in. Already Aegis Aurora are going to be able to scale up their control with this thrust through mid.
Oh, Wolfie goes down too over in the right lane. In the meantime, Pojilaya, Skumbriya trying to push down this lane one Walker, or not Walker, the Guardian. But this is where things get really interesting. This is where things are really going to open up, because that middle lane gets to rotate quite heavily. And you can already see them heading over to our right-hand lane, looking for their first flex slot here. Remember, it's 2 instead of 3 Guardians now. Uh-oh, they don't know this either. Oh, buddy. Overseas does go down, but Bandwise is going to fall. And now, can you dodge this? Straight into the satchel you go. Decent damage off that for Wolfie, but he is going to try and get away. He threw the cloak, so he will retreat. Here's the Death Slam, though, coming straight on in. Big catch here. Fremont gets slammed on, but Sunset has to respect this a little bit and back away. It's getting awfully messy in this right lane. But somehow, the Lash and the Pocket will withstand, and by time for Bandwise to get back there. And this is where we kind of see that, like, solo lane farming that you would normally see from like having a solo lane in the previous patch. You can see with the Guardian down in middle, it's just come down to Sonic Sniper being left alone for the most part to continue to farm up as much as he possibly can. And keep an eye on where he is. He's actually trying to invade into the enemy jungle, which becomes even more important with how things have changed this last patch. And you're going to see a lot of fighting over this jungle for a lot of these teams, since it's a lot of your farm can come from those positions.
It's crazy how just that one Guardian going down has broken the game up entirely. This is over on that left lane, though, and Pojilaya Skumbriya found great success here. Again, really, it's off the timing of Janside having a telekinesis. It was almost guaranteeing a kill. In that case, it was 2. That Guardian is down there. So Pojilaya Skumbriya have some map control there at least, and they might look to try and convert that into some mid-presence. But right now, they are shoving. We're on boarding with Fremont. This is the right side of the map, where Wolfie ends up getting caught out. And this is Pojilaya Skumbriya getting shoved right on back. You can see how much map control can be taken off of this.
Yeah, flex slot picked up. Pojilaya off this, though, trying to push in towards this Walker again. Just killing one Walker will be enough to get you another flex slot here for Pojilaya. I guess technically their first of the game, and no one's really coming to actually reinforce this one. Fremont's going to be coming in from base to help defend this. If we could actually, when we have time, go back to Hapax. I want to see what he's been leveling first, as well as overseas. I'm kind of curious how they're building in particular. Lady Guys, for instance, in EU, you see a lot more of the life drain, the 2 being leveled up first, whereas in NA, you see more of the 1 for the bomb and the damage over time it leaves. I would imagine with him being left alone, he would probably have been leveling his bomb just to kind of counter push out the 2-man aggression.
We'll check in with that when we can. Pretty dangerous out there for Bandwise, who's obviously trying to passively take some of his farm, but a drift over here from Pojilaya Skumbriya leaves 2 to 3 players in the vicinity of mid. And in that neutral territory on the right side of the map, Aegis Aurora are moving through, trying to clear this out. Remember, now the timings of, a lot of those camps spawning up has changed. So that is also like a cadence that our teams are sort of playing off of now. Trying to make sure that
this is the
they
big
can
one, right? 8 minutes, Sinner sacrifices come up. Again, 3 buffs if you can time it correctly, and you should see the team start to like kind of group up and take those away, especially if you're Aegis Aurora. You want to take them away from Pojilaya since you're on their side of the map. As Sunset, speaking of being taken out, he's going to fall on the lash. Aegis Aurora, with that kill, they should be looking to take away as much jungle as possible. But obviously, with lane 1 still pushing, how is Alex and Jamside still getting away with this without being punished?
And what point are those two also just going to maybe take their foot off the gas and go clear some of these camps that have just spawned up, including the 2 vaults here? Right now, they're just seem adamant about wanting to get this Walker presence, but that's the only lane in which Aegis Aurora obviously have lost their Guardian. So you might want to try and take this pressure and apply it somewhere else, because right now you can see Asanya Sniper has actually gotten into a lot of those camps here, starting to clear around mid.
Oh yeah, it's huge, and you're seeing him take jungle, and I don't think we're seeing Pojilaya take really much of anything at the moment when it comes to this in particular. ABL might get caught here. Sunset forced to back away, but the paradoxical swap comes through, and he's going to fall, and now the aggression is going to come in onto this right lane walker out of Aegis Aurora. Or are they going to back away and start taking some of these camps?
Yeah, they really want to hang around here. ABL's got to be careful, though, because Pocket's about to dive on them here, and yep, he's got company. Mo and Krill, of course, across the map, getting pressured now. We're about to have telekinesis available, so very unlikely that there's going to be any chance of escaping if you're Wizasta. Well, you're definitely not getting out now, that's for sure. Frozen shelter deployed, and telekinesis just to secure the kill. Wizasta is down, but this is about to get very messy over on this side of the map. He's going to get hit by a carbine now as Jamside trying to play through that wall here, looking to try and get back. Good damage they put down with the rapid fire into his free mock, and Hapax is the one that falls, and Pojilaya Skumbriya might be able to turn this fight around. This is bloody awkward now. See, Kelvin is here. Alex has turned up now, able to hit a frost grenade on towards Overseas, who got the heck out of there pretty bloody quickly with the TP, but they've been followed through there. Wolfie, though, doesn't quite feel like they have the backup to try and go for a play.
No, and it's going to come down to these buffs you can see here in that picture-in-picture. Up on the high ground now. Makes it much more interesting to contest for these teams. And it's nice to see a little bit of extra verticality added to the map here. But that whole play was set up by Pojilaya actually, hitting the teleporter on the right-hand side and getting behind them on lane 1 to kind of punish the counter push out of Aegis Aurora after they did catch out Jamside, I believe. Or sorry, no, it was actually Wizaster. But I'm still surprised, and maybe we can bring ZP in here really quickly as we're at the 10.5 minute mark. I'm surprised to see so many of these Sinner sacrifices just being left alone, as we see finally one of our first ones go down, and you can see Fremont getting those 3 buffs.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, especially the preamp where, some coaches were talking about, like, yeah, it's all about the Gamba. Not as much here, but I do think what's interesting is that, in consulting with coaches beforehand, right, they talked about how teams are going to be more aggressive on their right lane, right, from their perspective. That, teams will basically prioritize that as their strong lane, put their best lanes there, and use that because it's a great entry into the enemy jungle. And we've seen that with both Aegis Aurora and Pojilaya Skumbriya favoring that side of the map respectively. Al coming in, though. Looking for anything on the hunt. Just a greeting to the lash there, Mitch.
Yeah, definitely no chance of there sort of being any form of follow-up there, but that's sort of by the by. We haven't really discussed too much about these builds throughout this game. I know you'll obviously notice that, much of the same from last week. So we are seeing a few restorative lockets here. That burst healing is really relevant, especially when you're playing against a Lady Geist. And obviously, much of those same like cold front here, of course, being picked up for Wolfie as he tries to chase Fremont down. We'll see the cold front actually used there to try and slow up this paradox, but they're a little bit hard to catch right now. You see everyone trying to make use of Kelvin's icy road, and Fremont does eventually get brought to heal. Now, though, some serious numbers here for Pojilaya Skumbriya. Of course, we have an urn in this part of the map. And of course, a lot of those key power spikes happening around these T2 items as they're being obtained, and a heal bane getting picked up here for the Vindicta.
I mean, Pojilaya, they get a kill on lane 1, but they don't push off of that. Instead, it's a counter push out of Aegis Aurora. Now Pojilaya able to catch them out as they quickly went back to base and got back to the right-hand lane here. And this would be perfect to take a walker, as they already have the one in the left lane already extremely low. They do trade out 1-for-1 so far. There's the affliction coming through out of Wolfies. They're trying to go for the chase here, Mitch.
Yeah, Aegis Aurora in a great position, and Sanya Sniper just quietly is up to 12k, so a lot of farm they've been able to pick off. They get themselves a Guardian here, and Aegis Aurora continuing to put that pressure down. That was the final Guardian, of course, in the possession of Pojilaya Skumbriya, and this is where things get a little bit scary for your Sapphire side team. Teleporter's getting a lot more use now that it's easy to get caught out deep pushing a lane, and Aegis Aurora looking at multiple of these walkers simultaneously in our side lanes.
Okay, so what has Overseas leveled? So he's got level 2 on his ultimate, so he has level 3 Crow. Okay. So I just wanted to check that because we've seen a little bit of a change up. I know we talk a lot about, when we get to 7, 8k on Vindicta, you look for the max level assassinate so you can get the extra souls. But I think we're going to start to slowly see a little bit of a different build come out for Vindicta by maxing that Crow. It's basically a free spiritual overload because you get the extra spirit damage and bullet damage to the person who has the Crow on him, and it ricochets as well in the fights. So it makes it really easy to get that like kind of free 6k item just for maxing that ability.
There it is. Product placement. I love it. Binding Word here, going to basically hold ABL in place. They're going to trade out. Bandwise actually ends up falling ABL. How the heck? They're so fed. They're hitting so bloody hard. I honestly thought they went down in that situation, but help came to the rescue, excuse me. And I'm going to say Freemock's timing throwing that wall up was absolutely massive. Pojilaya and Skumbriya are in trouble now. 2 players down there. They, of course, do have a way to make a play off this telekinesis, but Jamside is just farming passively right now.
Yeah, they use the frozen shell to stop any sort of push onto this lane, right lane walk. Let's see, it takes some time to get used to, I swear. But also, if you look at like the soul discrepancies between these two teams, it's Sonya Sniper kind of leading the charge and ABL in different ways. ABL's been a part of a lot of these fights. He's been picking up a lot of kills, getting the assist in as well. But Sonya's been more about, let me just farm jungle constantly and take it away from Pojilaya's side. And honestly, the gap that they have might not seem like much at 5k, but if he continues to do this, Aegis Aurora are going to get so far ahead of their opponents.
Look at those mid-breakables now. They spawn up, I think, at 8 minutes as well, or maybe it's 10 rather, at the same time as the boss does. But that is a pretty ridiculous amount of stats that you can get over the course of the game. If you're farming that actively, you're going to get absolutely out of control. We saw previously, I think it was actually Freemock, busting up one of those vaults to get those 3 buffs. Wolfie, the affliction there just popped as a bit of a panic measure, I think, but there was no way that any help was coming to them. Binding Word here instantly. Okay, we really want that buff, I'm not going to lie. And, of course, final stand going to be used here. And Bandwise, it's the second panic use of an ultimate I think we've seen here for Pojilaya Skumbriya. I'm going to call it that if I can't be certain. Walker now being pressured, of course. ABL is a little low right now. They're very low, in fact, and Sunset will take a bit of a freebie.
I'm kind of surprised to see this game play out the way it's been so far. It's just been pretty constant, as you know, ZP mentioned. Just the Aegis Aurora side, the Amber side pushing the right-hand lane. The Sapphire side pushing our left-hand side quite heavily. But I really feel like the focus shouldn't be on that as much. I was expecting a lot more fighting when it came to the jungles, but most of our fighting's been either on the rune that we just saw, or it's been in the lanes, which is kind of surprising considering like a lot of the value that you can get is in these jungles. Again, the Sinner Sacrifice, I'm gonna say it 1,000,000 times tonight, and the jungle camps, because they're kind of extremely close together. A lot of the souls you can get for like really quick items or like a really quick advantage belong there, not into a lane.
Yes, that's kind of why I suggested we might see like individuals primarily spend their time roaming. Now, it wasn't really until that sort of mid-guardian went down that we actually started to see that happening. People actually kept their lanes. So you can really see the laning phase is still heavily predicated around the life of that guardian. Now, of course, as that is broken down, Pojilaya and Skumbriya still have to try and make a way to... Oh, God, that was a brutal warp zone. Alkfire going to be thrown down in response, though. So you do have to respect the damage in this area of effect. And might have been a telekinesis there. No, Jamside still has that one available. Either way, a little bit messy here for Aegis Aurora. Al comes on in, secures the kill, we'll say, on MXM. There's still more work to be done. And ABL is about to be frozen solid now. They do have big damage. I wouldn't put it past them, but... No, they drop, and that is a 3-for-1 trade for Pojilaya Skumbriya.
To say this would have been huge, but Sonya comes in, is able to help equalize things. It's 3-2, and well, he should be fine for this one, but again, those flame dash is going to help heal him quite a bit, and also give him the longevity and the ability to escape from this one quite easily, as they are pushing lane 1 at the exact same time. But they do get themselves a walker and their second flex slot of the game. Pojilaya, mid for 17 minutes in, they don't have a single flex slot yet.
Yeah, it's rough. The fact that you get a flex slot, I think, for the first walker is actually really quite significant. Yeah. To get some of the other ones, it's a little bit harder. You really got to break the base here. But Sunset goes down here. We're going to have a last stand. Use that again. There's just no time to make it happen. The sheer amount of burst damage on this Aegis Aurora team is disgusting. Between the two, sort of flyers. But then, of course, what we know that Lady Geist can put down, especially if she's going to make an essence swap happen. Pojilaya Skumbriya, while there was hope for them in that previous fight, it's only an 8k soul deficit. It is not the end of the world, but they have not been able to get in position. And look at the soul allocation for Aegis Aurora. Sonya Sniper probably getting to the point where they're virtually unkillable at this stage of the game with the amount of spirit lifesteal that they have available to them. A heal bane as well, just to make things even more difficult. And we're headed subterranean, folks, for this mid boss. Much harder to access now for someone like Pojilaya Skumbriya. You've got to go down the tunnels, and they can be guarded pretty effectively. So this will be, for all intents and purposes, uncontested.
Yeah, very, very free for them. And also at the same time, they're trying to run the urn. But I want to bring ZP in really quickly here. You know, Sonya Sniper, he went for the flame dash as his max first with the rapid recharge, so he can constantly get around the jungle and farm up. I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, because we are seeing maybe that adaptation of the way hydration plays sitting in a lane forever farming. Maybe it's the jungle now is the lane.
You can funnel way more effectively. Of course, you see here, quick little team fight catch going on. But look, the reality is in the situation is that you think about the objectives and how this went down, right? Aegis Aurora got all 3 Guardians down early. Pojilaya Skumbriya just now got their 2nd Guardian down. And as a result, Aegis Aurora had vastly increased access to the jungle. And a lot of that was Sanya getting rich, getting fed the entire way through. And the thing is, too, with only 3 lanes, you can deny the other team from getting some of those early Guardians down. So it really does snowball a bit out of control if you can't get at least 2 Guardians down early, because it's not just that you're down the flex slot, it's that you're down access to the jungle. It's that the other team is going to be able to steal your jungle with impunity, and you cannot return the favor. And it's a huge reason as why Sanya is so far ahead right now on the Infernus.
Saint gets caught. Here's another Warp Stone combo. Mix up for the Disasters. They're trying to catch on towards this Mirage. They might realize that they're in trouble. Now, Saint is going to be surrounded here. And eventually, Pojilaya Skumbriya right here, though. So there might be a larger fight forward off the back of this. Got a Warp Stone out here for Disaster. And Overseas being a little bit late to the game means that that'll be an unresponded kill. I want to point out, a Suppressor was just picked up for the Kelvin. So Alex is going to be ultra annoying, being able to slow fire rate and move speed. Now, Deathslam catches free mock out just as they were looking to set something up. And right onto the Walker is not where you want to be thrown. Another Carbine loaded up here. It is unlikely there'll be any further pursuit. Another Walker picked up, though. Pojilaya Skumbriya now are down to only their mid-Walker. As upstairs goes Wolfie, pumps out Affliction here, trying to put their pressure down on Overseas. They're low, but they're looking to try and get away. Affliction tries to get big barrage connection around that corner, but will be denied it. Under it's Wolfie, should I say. And Hapax is here. Got to be hitting pretty darn hard. Wolfie ignoring them for the most part, though, and at least is able to secure their kill. Now it's a question of whether or not the pocket can escape. Looks like the answer is yes.
Is it, though? I don't know. I just want to keep seeing these actually to get the chase. Now, she should be fine. I think the fact is, like, he delayed Wolfie from getting back to defend. And Aegis Aurora get the middle walker on top of this. So they get another flex slot unlocked because of that. So they're sitting on 3 flex slots and so, 130k souls. Like, they're looking really comfortable here. As we're eventually going to head over to, like, seeing what kind of items they have. And again, with that Rejuvenator, which they still have, they got, what, 2 walkers, they got quite a few kills, they got an urn turn-in, and they got a lot of the jungle. And Pojilaya Skumbriya have no jungle left to be seen.
Withering Whip here picked up. This is very good. I mean, that it applies that fire rate slow is pretty sick. And against, like, you know, characters that are stacking bullet resist is quite powerful. But you notice the build there, you know, for the pocket was in pretty good shape, right? Wolfie had the Diviner's Kevlar, so that big power spike at tier 4. Biting Word, though, is going to be a bit of a problem here for Freemock. They may not have anywhere to go. They're going to swap Sunset, at least try and catch them through the time wall and get that silence. Disaster Wall 4 Sunset, though, ultimately goes down. Freemock, by the way, still living through all of this. Amidst this, an urn has been picked up, and we're right over the turn-in location. So Alex just slots that in, realizing that maybe the fight is not really theirs to win. Divine Barrier popped here as Alex is trying to get away. Slow ABL down at the very least now. And the Vindicta's a problem. She is chasing it. Overseas has the damage to bring Alex down. The Soul Lead now might be starting to get a little out of hand as Wolfie has to satchel to try and stave off that damage. And one win, or rather Overseas, excuse me, still has the clan tag. Able to take that kill.
Aegis Aurora now looking extremely good here. They still have a long time to go before that mid-boss does respawn in. But again, these flex slots unlocked. They can knock on the front door here and start to take down some of these base guardians as they're just kind of regrouping through here. Taking away every crate, every gold pot they possibly can. Honestly, I was expecting to take down some guardians. No running. And maybe push for some shrines, considering that man advantage they had. But I guess farm the jungle is a little bit more of a priority for them. But they're sitting on like a 24k soul lead. Sonya Sniper is almost at 30k. He almost has double the souls on quite a few players, at least half the players on Pojilaya's side. Don't check the math on that one, guys. Let's ignore that. But he's still so far ahead of so many players that he's insanely hard to kill. And ABL is sitting on 30K. Like, even saw Fremont, he got caught with a swap, and he was able to just tank the entire team.
Look at that. Just the swing over the top. Gemside is done. There's no way they're getting out of that. Bandwise also gets caught out here. I think it was Gemside they managed to connect that carbine onto. They had to basically bust everything they had to get out. Sunset will be chased down here. The flame dash is going to close the gap onto them now. Cold front, though, going to be used. Tiny Sniper has to ethereal shift away from that telekinesis. Should be able to get out. Yep, they do escape. Brilliant stuff. Debuff Reducer, of course, was used there for Tiny Sniper for that survivability. An owl thrown in there, and Fremont actually does get caught. So Wolfie's able to get some value here. Alex picks up that bag, and we'll see the retreating backs of Aegis Aurora.
Yeah, kind of respect it. You don't want to give up too much more. A 1-for-1 trade there. I mean, it's not the best of trades for you for Aegis Aurora, considering the lead that they do have. But I don't think you're going to lose too much more. You're going to allow Pojilaya to get back into the game. And again, there's a lot of these sacrifices to be taken. Let's see if we get -3 here. Oh, he waits for the reset. He should be able to get on that one. Yeah, no, Jonas actually made a really good point in chat, because we did see Bandwise miss his earlier. I just wasn't sure if it was the spec bug or not. But you can't really afford to be missing those center sacrifices, to be honest. Like, 3 of those little pots is huge.
Well, it's so all you do, Jace, you start charging the charge melee when there are 2 lights left to turn on. So it's the same each time. It's just the timing. It just means you might have to wait sometimes for the next like rotation of like bulbs to light up. But yeah, you start charging that charge melee when there are 2 left to light up, and it'll be fun.
I mean, easier said than done in the moment for me. I've already messed up quite a few times, to be honest.
It's fine. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I play Kelvin. I haven't touched him.
You just being a player.
Exactly. James trying to back away here. Oh, caught out by the swap once again. This, I mean, if it's not already clear, this is really just the death throws for Pojilaya Skumbriya. It's going to be hard for them to break back into the game now. 24 minutes into the game, we have a pretty extensive soul lead. I think Wolfie is going to be a central player in any comeback attempt if there is one. Because that Divinus Kevlar is, online, that means that the post-affliction gameplay for Wolfie can be pretty gainful. And obviously, that is going to be where they are at their strongest. But elsewhere, Sign is getting stronger still. ABL also is looking very, very powerful. Obviously, with big investments into that spirit damage. So, it's like there was a surge of power picked up earlier on. And that's improved, or the cooldown reduction, at least on the charge shots. So, obviously, out in the open, overseas and ABL as a combination are going to be pretty impossible to deal with.
You mentioned Wolfie as being like a pretty pivotal player. I think for Pojilaya, the most important player right now is Sunset. Like, he has to hit a good ultimate, and then into the Frozen Shelter, into an Affliction, into a Last Stand. Like, they basically need a pretty big wombo combo right now to get back into the game against Aegis Aurora. And I think we're seeing Aegis Aurora kind of respect that, because they could have been sieging for a long time now, having almost a 30k soul lead. There's so many avenues that they could have taken to get into the base more properly, as Kelvin is just being murdered here. But I think they're being very respectful, and they're looking for picks. They're trying to let Fremont be the initiator and the one that actually starts the downfall of Pojilaya.
Wolfie just identifying some of these grey talent items. Yeah, Boundless Spirit, I think, has been picked up by ABL. Could we have a look at that recently purchased item list again? Actually, might be a good time to check in with that while we have a brief pause. It's not a long one, that's for sure. Alex, rather, excuse me, just using a self rescue beam there for the healing. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, Colossus coming up here for Hapex. So just the big items. Boundless Spirit, right, is the one we just mentioned here. So those T4s are now coming online for Aegis Aurora. It represents a power spike that should let them, Jason, close this game.
I think if they get a kill on Sunset, they're going to look for the finish here. You see Sonya kind of eyeing him up, but you're just also still seeing like how scary Aegis Aurora are at the moment. But with the Frozen Shelter coming out because Alex was caught out, that's a big component of their big wombo combo that they would have honestly needed to win this, or to get it back into this game. Saint's going to fall as well, and the Owl's going to come through. Aegis Aurora, they're going to go on the warpath.
Yeah, it's time to wrap this one up, I think. Now we're getting up to about a 40k so lead. To get that last flex slot, you need to take down one of the shrines and 1 pair of base guardians, but it seems like that's probably not that necessary for Aegis Aurora right now. I don't know what's giving me that impression, folks. It's really just a Sixth Sense thing, really. Both shrines get eliminated, and here it is. Patron starting to get a little bit of attention. Pojilaya, Skumbriya are without 3 players now, and they are walking into a hellscape when they come back off respawn. Patron knocked into the pit it goes, and Aegis Aurora regroup here for one last push.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to try to close it out here. Not when Sunset's coming up with his ultimate. I think they're going to retreat back, go for a mid ball. Actually, I don't even know if they're going to go for... I think I think you go for a mid boss here, but it's a bait mid boss initially to see if Sunset's gonna take the bait. I don't think you necessarily want to commit to it when it could be stolen away again. Did
they remove the colossal cones from the bull statue?
Yeah.
Hey, in the big 2025? What do you mean? What's wrong with that? They castrated the bull.
Yeah, so that's pretty normal.
What do you mean?
What do I mean?
What do you mean normal? How's it normal?
Babies?
Bro.
Statue, Mitch.
You don't need to castrate someone to get rid of them infertile. Bro. Oh, come on, man. That's crazy. Okay, well, let's get back to business here. You can see these charge shots are devastating. This is Pojilaya Skumbriya hoping to push out and maybe, yeah, fight for this mid boss if possible, but Overseas is in a very powerful position. Tiny able to chase Wolfie down now. And oh, look at that. They come out fully healthy. Yeah, well, they've also added a crippling headshot to their arsenal here. So the GG's already getting called. It looks like, okay, Pojilaya Skumbriya are actually just calling the GG.
Yeah, they know it's over. I mean, Mitch, do you spend most of your game just looking at the balls in that bowl?
No, I've just seen them before, and they're pendulous. They're quite marvelous.
You know what? It ain't -3 anymore. It's -2 for that bowl.
That's crazy. That's crazy, bro. Okay. All right, well, folks, this is more of a formality than anything else. We've already had Pojilaya Skumbriya basically pull out of the game here. They go for one last fight, and they realize that that was their last chance. So this is all just a matter of wrapping up the game. We'll be able to bring up your in-game screen soon. By the way, ABL, about 40k souls on that Grey Talon. Signing Sniper pretty close here. Aegis Aurora on the first competitive game, I guess I'll call it that, competitive game on this new patch that I've seen. I'll give a qualifier just in case like Fish Sticks is out there running a random tournament the day after and getting in ahead of us. But again, pretty impressive stuff. As soon as that mid Guardian goes down, Jason, the game just takes on a very different flavor.
Thing is, I don't want to like look at that result as super harsh because every team, every player, every viewer, every caster is trying to learn how to play when it comes to this new meta. I think Aegis Aurora just slightly ahead with them taking, like I said, that mid guard and allowing Sonic Sniper to just get in the jungle and almost just never leave, constantly farming up. He's able to build up a gigantic lead. Not to mention ABL on the Grey Town as well. He was pretty much the exact same kind of level of souls, was able to put out ridiculous damage when we do get to the match results. But yeah, I think they just had a slight advantage, maybe a little bit more experience. I know that they were scrimming today against a couple of teams. I think Pojilaya had maybe one scrim block before we got into DFN today. So I mean, even just having like 1 or 2 scrim blocks can mean the difference between getting knocked out in the first round or playing against Virtus.Pro.
I think like I saw Deathy in the chat saying they're going to raw dog it today. You know, they probably haven't really had nearly enough time to sort of prep this, which is kind of fine. Let's bring ZP in here and get some thoughts on, I guess, like what the biggest standout differences are to you as a, you know, in this form of Deadlock as opposed to our 4-lane Deadlock of the past.
I think the key thing here is that you have to prioritize early building objectives being down way more heavily, because you take a look at how the AA game plan worked here, right? It was very simple. They stacked more early game power than the norm, right? Like Talon, Vindicta, Paradox, Mo, these are all characters that really let you sort of put your will on the game in the early part. They used it to get 2 Guardians down immediately, not only getting the flex slot, right? But it opened the way for them to be aggressive in both the left and right lane and leave the middle open for Sanya to just go in. And it was like an all-you-can shop, full shopping spree in the middle, in the jungle, just continually devouring jungle farm that otherwise would have went the way of Pojilaya Skumbriya, right? The fact that the jungle is more easily stolen, the fact that you really need your Guardians to help defend it, means that if you lose your Guardians early, you give up the ability for the other team to invade your jungle, to get rich at your expense, and that was a huge reason why eventually the soul difference between the two teams became huge. That and the fact that ABL was simply playing out of their mind on the Talon by both the eye test and the actual damage stats.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't even just chilling in the jungle for most of the game. They just, again, were able to get extremely powerful from pure weight of kills. Let's talk about a player of the match here presented by Intel then, because I think this is a great segue off of who we just discussed. For this challenger match, it's going to be ABL on the Grey Talon. Looking incredible. I had a look, just a glance at some of the items being brought up, and I was shocked, Jason, by how quickly they were getting into those tier 3, tier 4s. 40k souls farmed, 42k player damage. The next closest on this team for reference was 24k. That was overseas.
Yeah, you can't sleep on Talon. Like, he just does ridiculous damage, and I think we're seeing why teams are playing him so much more often. If you think back to Saf just a few weeks ago, he was destroying Pojilaya with the Great Talon in particular, and it's just all in all such a strong pick, high mobility. I think the really interesting thing about the way they played out the Talon was actually playing it with the Vindicta together, ZP, and it had pretty damn good success over in the right hand lane.
It really did. I mean, it's a lot of burst damage, period, right? Where, especially if you're a Talon and you're landing your shots, it's one of the most jarring things in the game when a Talon is ahead and suddenly you're down half your HP. And we saw ABL just weave effortlessly in front of some very difficult situations, right? Like shaking pressure, dropping an arrow, getting one down, you know, again, shaking a little bit more pressure, dropping another arrow, getting a second down. ABL, from both the eye test and the actual stats we saw, just had an enormous game, and that just snowballed all the other mechanics we saw, gave players like Sanya more space to eat the jungle. And I think what we're seeing here potentially develop on the new patch is that you have to value your early and mid game even more than you did previously, because on paper, the comp Pojilaya Skumbriya was running was a very, very good comp in the late game, right? You have things like Warden and Wraith.
Really well.
Yeah, Warden, Wraith, and Kelvin, right? These are the pillars of any late game comp pre-patch, but they never got to come online because they couldn't farm their jungle half the time, and they were constantly stuck defending from the overwhelming pressure of the Aegis Aurora composition.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty filthy stuff there. Nicely done, of course, from Aegis Aurora. They will be advancing, of course, to our money match. That's right, a best of 3 going up against Virtus.Pro. The stats there are pretty striking. You can see that's how it's played out. NA, of course, if you're hanging around for that one, I mean, you've got great games in the meantime. TF2 Boomers and Melee Creeps. Name a never more quintessential matchup in a challenger match at a Deadlock Fight Night. They'll be, of course, going head-to-head to take on Hydra Nation. So don't go too far. Coming up next, we're in the EU portion of the show. It's VP, it's Aegis Aurora, it's a best of 3 for all the marbles. Don't go anywhere, folks. This is the Deadlock Fight Night number 15, presented by Intel.